Lauren, you
Uh, I gotta get this off.
Can you each?
Yep. There we go. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Pathways Through the Dark Writing Workshop. I'm Lauren Petrocelli from VIA, here with our instructors, Dr. Bob Giannetti and Norah Perez. I'd like to thank our sponsors, the NACC, VIA, Lewiston Library, and Humanities of New York. Our agenda for today is going to be introductions. Bob and Norah are going to share some information with us. We're going to ask class participants who'd like to read your work and give you feedback. And then Bob and Norah will conclude today's workshop at the end. So we're going to start with introductions. As a reminder, because some of us are here in the library and some of us are on Zoom, it's helpful to say your name when you're speaking and to say something when you're finished, such as check, I'm done, or over and out. When you do introductions for today, if you're not sure what to say, at a minimum could be your name and where you're coming from, what city, and anything else you'd like to share with the group. So I'll get us started. I'm Lauren Petrocelli, social worker from VIA, joining today from the Lewiston Library. I'll start with class introductions for people in the library, and then I will ask each person by name to introduce themselves. Next, I'm going to ask our next person in the room to come up to where I am to give introductions so everyone can hear you. So as we're doing that, we'll do class introductions, and then I'll ask Zoom participants to introduce themselves.
Good spot.
All right, go ahead, Helen. Go ahead, you can introduce yourself. We're not doing reading yet, just introductions.
Hi, I'm Helen Clark and I'm Lewiston.
Thank you.
Stacy?
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 Do you want to? Actually, you know what? Let's go to the room. We'll go to Zoom and we'll come back to the room.
Okay.
How about Michael Stacy?
Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. I'm coming to you from the Berkshires, and the place is loaded with wildlife. A mama moose and a baby moose, mama bear who's around 600 pounds, and 3 baby cubs, which are actually not cubs anymore. They're actually small teenagers at this point. I'm done.
Great.
Thank you. Next is Geraldine.
I'm Geraldine Wilson. I'm coming to you from Buffalo, New York. No moose, no bears, but lots of grass and sunshine.
Just Buffalo.
Next is Therese.
Therese, you there?
Good morning. This is Therese. I am coming to you live from Youngstown, New York. In the comfort of, again, a beautiful day, sun shining, a couple bunnies, lots of birds. I'm excited to be here with all of you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Christopher.
Christopher Sabin. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm just in my home office. It's hot, it's sunny, it's just 80 degrees. It isn't even noon. It's supposed to go up into the high 80s today. And, we just have our family dog here. And Lauren, I didn't realize this until now, but you're a social worker. I'm actually a social worker myself. I have a master's degree from the University of Cincinnati and worked for 5 years as a social worker and service coordinator. So
Thank you. Worker Christopher, I worked as a service coordinator earlier in my career, so I'm giving you an imaginary fist bump for social work before we move.
almost definitely, it's a difficult job. I'll tell you, it's interesting.
Definitely interesting. Next is Rosetta.
Good morning, everyone. I'm coming from sunny Niagara Falls. The water's still running free.
Glad to hear it.
Our next participant is Ben Long.
Where's Jen?
Jen, I think you're on mute. We can come back if you want.
All
We'll
right.
come back to you. That's okay. And last but not least, Kelly.
Kelly's,
Also-
I'm here. On mute because lots of stuff going on. Hi, this is Kelly Lang. I'm with the Niagara Arts and Cultural Center, and I am currently setting up for an opera performance at the Niagara Arts and Cultural Center. And so I will put myself on mute because there's going to be a lot of sound from my end.
Oh yeah.
Thanks. Then we'll come back to you if you're ready.
All right, this is Jen Long from Angola. The sun is out, the pool is open, and we have flowers planted in the yard.
hey,
Very good.
Beautiful.
Next is Stacy.
Hi, I'm Stacy Evans from Lewiston, here in the library.
And Michelle.
Michelle?
Where do I see right here?
Yeah.
yep. hey.
Hi, this is Michelle Kritz. I'm the librarian here at the Lewiston Library. Welcome.
And this is Lauren again. There's a really cute bird at our window looking in at our class
Oh,
and holding a worm in his mouth.
He is.
So maybe he'll come join us for today's class.
Oh, it was looking for a rose.
Maybe. And what a great transition. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Bob and Nora.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's so nice to be here again. In our mission to be helpful to both students here at the Lewiston Public Library and those listening in online, each Pathways Through the Dark session for the past few weeks has begun with a theme related to writing, power of poetry, the short story, creating a character on the same page, etc., in which Bob Giannetti and I have drawn on our own writing and publishing experiences to offer suggestions and guidelines that may inspire more confidence and flexibility in your own promising work. But last week, Bob tossed out an assignment that might have proved as challenging to you as it has been for me. Interpreting Gertrude Stein's enigmatic statement that a rose is a rose is a rose is a rose. After reading all about Ms. Stein for several days, I don't care what that baffling phrase means because I have concluded that Ms. Stein, while certainly interesting enough as a character, is a quack, is a quack, is a quack, is a quack. Gertrude, an American, Jewish, anti-Semite expatriate who was protected by Nazi collaborators in Paris in World War II, dismissed the wives and girlfriends of the artists and writers at her stimulating Parisian salon in the 1920s and 30s by setting them aside in another room, attended to by her wife, Alice B. Toklas. Gertrude, an affluent woman who was vast, plain, bold, and mannish, believed she was the only presence sturdy enough to withstand and dominate competing male voices and intellectual opinions. Now, although her literary fame is largely dismissed or forgotten by other generations, Stein's assertive statement that a rose is a rose is a rose is a rose seems immortal. Why is that? A white rose is a symbol of freshness and purity, like a young girl's corsage for a prom. A single red one is an avowal of love, a promise of a future. A perfumed layering of scent as delicate as bridal lingerie. Or it might be a voluptuous scattering of crimson petals, a silken symbol of desire, a delirious pathway to a candlelit bed. A rose is ceremonial, present at weddings and funerals, patriotic events, sentimental arrivals, and poignant departures. A rose is a bestseller color for lipstick, clothing, and fabrics, for the magic of lenses that enhance the world, for bubbling wine that tickles the senses. A rose is a cherished friend or an ambivalent foe that pricks flesh and draws blood. Gather ye rosebuds while you may, Robert Herrick penned long ago. Old time is still a flying, and this same flower that smiles today, tomorrow will be dying. Now let's hear what a rose is a rose is a rose is a rose means to you. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Bob, did you want to make a few comments before we?
Sure. There is a historical background to the veneration of the rose. It starts back in ancient Greece with the goddess Aphrodite, appropriately enough, who was the goddess of love, Venus in Latin, Aphrodite in Greek. And her favorite flower, her emblem, if you will, was the rose. Now, there are so many instances of the rose appearing in classical literature, and something happens when we get up into the Christian era. The rose has become a symbol of the Virgin Mary, and so there are so many associations there, which are interesting and also lead us to the modern era. But sticking with medieval times, there was a famous medieval poem, a long narrative poem called The Romance of the Rose, Le Roman de la Rose. And this was written by two people. One started it, died, and the next one finished it. The first of the authors in 1240, year 1240 AD, was Guillaume de Lorry, William of Lorry, and it was picked up about 50 years later by Jean de Meung, Jean, Jen, John. And what this tells the story of, that's kind of interesting, is of a dreamer. So many things in medieval literature involve dreams. And so in dreams, there's license to imagine everything. And what the dreamer dreams about is a garden, and he looks over the garden wall and spies a rose, and he tries to pluck it, but there are thorns. Okay, there are brambles, there are all sorts of obstacles. And here is where the idea of personification comes in. There's a character who appears in this called Danger. Now, danger is an abstract thought, but it becomes a character blocking the dreamer from obtaining the rose. There are all sorts of other obstacles to attain the rose. There's a character, Fair Welcome, who tries to include the lover and wants to introduce the lover to the rose. But he's blocked by other things like reason, chastity, and And those things are very real because at the bottom of this are all these associations, most of them erotic in the way that medieval literature could understand this, of the rose being the woman who was afraid to really let the lover get close. And so the symbolism of the thorns blocking the rose becomes a real issue. And finally, there's this notion, reason appears, as it does in a lot of medieval literature. And reason says, instead of pursuing the rose, let her be, you'd be better off with me, meaning common good sense, chastity, be, just be a very nice knight and do the things that knights do. Well, this is kind of an interesting thing. At the end, he does get the rose, and fair welcome, allows it to happen, and it is a chaste thing. But all the ideas of lust and whatnot are tied up with it. There are other, as we move forward into the dawn of the Romantic period, William Blake has a poem called "The Sick Rose." The rose for him is a symbol of love or passion, and it's crimson and dark, but it's sick, and the worm has infected it. Shakespeare has a line, "The canker in the rose." There are all sorts of obstacles to appreciating the beauty of the rose. The rose in the Romance of the Rose makes use of all the personification that we talked about. If you want to talk more about personification later, it's good. William Faulkner has a short story called, to move really up the time chronologically, a story called "A Rose for Emily." And the rose, according to one critic, has a number of possible meanings. As Emily's lover, now dried and preserved, she keeps the rose as a dried and preserved rose, or a secret, as in the term sub rosa, the spies of modern day espionage lore have this term sub rosa. I'm going to keep this under the rose, it's secret. But taking this as far as we can into Umberto Eco, his famous novel, The Name of the Rose. And Umberto Eco discusses the reason behind the title to his 1989 novel, quote, "Because the rose is a symbolic figure so rich in meaning that it may now, that by now, it hardly has any meaning at all. Hence the nature of the assignment, because I think your challenge here, whether you realized it or not, was to try to pen something that is not cliche, that isn't formulaic. And so really, what does the rose mean to you? I turn it over to some brave soul who may have taken up this challenge, this gauntlet, if you will, in a medieval sense, and may want to share what you've thought about the rose. If you haven't written something and want to share your thoughts about it, that's fine too. Mike, you had your hand up first, and then Geraldine.
Okay. Roses. Life involves making many decisions. 1964, at 18, I made a momentous decision. I joined the Marine Corps and spent 16 months in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. Not a good decision. Vietnam is called the Pearl of the Orient. That was not my experience. My Pearl had jungles, swamps, rats as giant as small dogs, and venomous white-lipped pit viper and king cobra. The viper could grow to 6 feet and killed 125,000 people a year. It seriously injured 2.7 million people a year. The king cobra is 10 to 13 feet long and has a striking range, make a long striking range, making it one of the deadliest cobras. There are 37 varieties of deadly snakes in Vietnam. The insects are even more deadly. The 100-legged menace can leap long distances to bite its victims. Its poison is dangerous. It kills human cells. I was bitten by one on patrol. It blackened the left-hand side of my butt for a month. When I returned from Vietnam in 1966, I was temporarily stationed in Carolina at Camp Geiger, a holding station where Marines waited for their next duty station. The base is a sprawling number of huts and acres of forest. My days were monotonous, lying in my bunk for hours waiting to get my next duty station. I was nervous. Would the Marine Corps send me back to Vietnam, a hellhole? That was the rumor amongst the guys in the barracks. After a couple of weeks, I got my answer. A corporal came into the barracks calling out my name. Stacy. Yeah, the captain wants to see you. Now what? I was thinking. I followed the corporal into an office. The captain was sitting behind a desk. Captain, at ease, Stacy. I have 3 duty stations available for you. The first is the infantry. In my mind, that was not much of a choice. It meant going back to Vietnam, and I sure as hell didn't want that. I had survived one duty tour there and didn't want to push my luck. No thanks. Captain, the second choice is the Commandant's gardener. The Commandant is a 2-star general in the top office in the Marine Corps. I had never grown anything, flower or veg. This seemed like a risky choice. My father grew roses. I had not inherited his skill or interest with roses. Working for the top general was scary. I would be under a microscope daily. That did not appeal to me. I am not interested. Captain, your third choice is military escort. Military escorts bring deceased Marines home for a wake and their burial, working with the funeral director and the wife or parents of a Marine. Usually parents, as dead Marines were teenagers. The escort duty seemed like the best choice. Me, I'll take escort duty. During my year as an escort, I met all kinds of folks and had bizarre experiences, like waking a Marine in his family's living room. They were mountain people who lived in an isolated part of Kentucky. Mountain people are a lost world within the United States. They have their own laws and culture. The funeral director and I drove up winding mountain roads for hours to arrive at the dead Marine's home. 9 months later, into the escort duty, it happened. I'm done.
Okay, can we withhold comments at this point and move to what the purpose of this practice today would be is to see the various approaches. So let's get a number of them on the table and talk about them as a group. So thank you, Mike. And who else has something about a rose? Geraldine.
This one was very challenging for me, but I wrote actually 2 and another piece that I'm working on. So it says rose. Past tense of rise, inspirer of a smile, precious memory holder given as a surprise, love's metaphor, symbol of purity, a gift of friendship filled with beauty, presented for courage and romance too. Dear Rose, there is so much significance to you. Ability and power you are a symbol of. People see you, they are reminded of love. And then the next one says 5-petal flower, past tense of rise. Add a hyphen and you'll get a surprise. a kind of wine pronounced rosé, a sign of love on Valentine's Day. Gift of friendship full of beauty, symbol of power and nobility, a flash of fragrance pleasing to the nose. Nothing surpasses the beauty of a rose. And then next one says, write about a rose, the teacher said. Images of you invaded my head. I remember the first time I saw your name. Since that day, I've not been the same. You were beautiful, like nothing I'd seen. A jewel precious with stems of green. Red for admiration, green for good news. Hope represented in your rainbow hues. Black for mourning, so chic in style. White for innocence, like a child. And all the mystery that defines you, your petals are painted in shades of blue. Like an artist's palette, many colors you wear. I see you blooming everywhere. And then I stop there. I gotta finish it. I'm done.
Thank you very much. Well, we've got two very interesting things to talk about. Is there a third?
Want to read next?
Okay, I'll read.
I can switch places with you, because we can see if everyone can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Can
I
everyone?
have a story, but not a written story. If you don't mind me interrupting, I don't know if you guys can hear me or not.
We've got, we had called on Helen.
Okay.
So why don't we hear Helen first and then go to you, Therese?
Well, I'm sorry. Now I'm seeing it on the screen. I get it now.
Okay, and
Okay.
let us know if you can
Looks
hear.
like Rosetta's.
No.
That's great. It looks like Helen, Therese, and then Rosetta.
Hi, I'm Helen, and I'm going to read my prose. Moving with the roses. As I ventured into a field of roses, found myself in down spot during entrance and view. Hello, everyone. I heard them say, we will share our secrets. Each one of us holds a different. Gosh,
Can't hear her.
read the meaning.
Oh,
I think we can't hear Helen.
Yeah, you can't hear.
okay,
Yeah,
Helen,
so
can you
actually-
stand?
Can I speak for a second? Background noise.
Yes.
It's making it hard to hear.
Is someone rubbing on something or turning pages or something that's creating background noise,
Making noise, scratching noise.
scratchy noise?
Okay, it seems to have stopped.
This is Kelly. I'm muting everyone in the background. You'll have to unmute yourself in order to come back on.
Okay, it's Lauren. So welcome, Froggy. I just saw you came in. I apologize if you've been here and we haven't acknowledged you. The order of reading, we're going to start with Helen, then Therese, then Rosetta. And next, we're going to do a quick sound check to make sure that everybody can hear Helen. Because you're muted, if you can hear Helen, can you just give me a thumbs up on the screen? And if you can't hear Helen, could you give me a thumbs down? And it also looks like Christopher wants to read, so I'm gonna put you in the order after the next person. So we have Therese,
Get everyone.
Rosetta, Christopher, did I miss anyone? Stacy? Okay, please tell me if I missed anyone. Okay, Helen, would you like to give us a sound check, please?
Okay, can you hear me?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up,
You can hear
okay.
me?
Yep,
Okay,
go ahead, Helen.
all right. Strolling with the roses. As I ventured into a field of roses, found myself enchanted by their essence and beauty. Hello, everyone. How was your day? Then I heard them say, Listen closely. We will share our secrets. Each one of us holds a different one. Gosh, you're going to tell me the meaning of your colors? Yes, let us introduce ourselves. Hi, I'm the Blue Rose, known for enchantment and romance. Well, you're one for mysteries and adventure. Hi, I'm the Green Rose, known for hope and healing. You live life to the fullest, connecting with spiritual energy. Hi, I'm the Lavender Rose, known for enchantment and magic. You must be full of exhilarating experiences traveling through another realm. Hi, I'm the Orange Rose, full of enthusiasm and fascination. You must be the wild out of the Rose family. Hi, I'm the Peach Rose. I represent loyalty. You have such a warm color. My Twitter would just love to have some. Hi, I'm the Red Rose, full of love and passion. You're the fire that lights the way. Hi, I'm the Turquoise Rose, known for good luck and friendship. You must like to bring peace and happiness to everyone. Hi, I'm the Yellow Rose, known for friendship and care. You bring joy and happiness with you. Hi, I'm the White Rose, known for purity, chastity, and innocence. Well, you denote unconditional and pure love. Now that I come to the edge of your field, blessing all of you. Thank you for sharing your secrets. Sure enjoy strolling along with all of you today. Done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Therese.
Hi, everybody.
There she is.
Yes, you're there and you've unmuted yourself. Okay.
I myself. Be patient with me. I'm under, it's always something. I have a sinus infection, but no COVID. So the weather is helping. I don't have a written story, but I just want to share. I have much homework to do, but I did think about this one a lot, obviously, with the two stories that I could verbally share right now. My name is Therese. I am named after the little flower who is the rose. I was named by my great uncle, who is very prophetic. He's a priest, a Jesuit monk. And he named me Little Flower. So for the first 10 years of my life, that's how I was identified. And throughout the 54 years of my life, people always feel compelled to bring me roses, whether it be one, different colors. I just always been there. The second story, which is going to be a great memoir, is my daughter. My daughter's name is Mia Rose, MIA-ROSE, all one word. But Mia in Italian is she's my rose. Through my pregnancy, I was told that Mia was going to be born Down syndrome. So I was prepared for 7 months out of that pregnancy to deliver a Down syndrome child. When Mia was born, she was perfectly normal. And my son came into the delivery room about an hour after she was born. And he came in the room and said, "What's that smell?" And he smelled roses on paper. Thank you. Over.
Who do we have next?
Next is Rosetta.
Rosetta.
Hi, I'm here. So I have a short poem about the rose. And I think I was supposed to read the other piece, but I'll read it as called upon to do so. But this rose story, okay, I'll just read it. Rose garden. I planted a rose garden once. Men spat at it because they couldn't see it. Women gave their overstated opinions. Little boys trampled over it on the way to the ball field. Little girls plucked off flower petals to make imaginary tea. I planted a rose garden once. The climbing vines gnarled and tangled, wild, prickly thorns thickened. No one came to visit me there. One day, the city groundkeepers came by. They yanked the rose bushes from the trellis and snatched every plant up by its root, filling the flower bed with concrete. Done.
Hmm.
Thank you. Next is Christopher.
Yes, hi. I have a very brief poem. I had a lot going on, but just to give you some background, I had a mystical experience, actually several of them, regarding the smell of roses. It actually is a very similar experience to what Teresa's son had at the birth of her daughter, Mia. I've had that experience many times, and most definitely at the particularly at the passing of my aunt, not the aunt I mentioned poem last week, but another aunt who passed away of cancer, and I smelled roses as she was dying and for about a week afterward. And I smelled roses actually at several different times in my life, as well as church. I converted in 2005. So my poem, The Scent of Roses, distinctive and complete, perfect in so many ways, gives me the guidance and direction I need to do what is holy in your sight. Over.
Hmm.
Thank you. Last but not least is Stacy. I can trade places with you.
Hi, this is Stacy. There's a blonde wood hope chest that sits at the bottom of my bed. My mother says it's for when I get married. I'm never getting married. Boys are yucky. I'm not supposed to play with the chest. Apparently, it's kind of special. The only thing in it is a roll of silk material. My mother bought it when I was only 3 years old. It's off-white. It's for my wedding dress, which I'm never going to wear because I'm never going to get married. I could keep comics in there. Mom says I have too many, but I don't think you can ever have too many books, even if they are comic ones. I just got home from a school dance. I went with Tom. It's the first time my parents let me go with a boy. I didn't have to stand against a wall like I usually do with my girlfriends. We'd wait and wait for the boy to come and ask us to dance. But we'd enjoy talking and laughing with each other, even if we didn't get to dance much. But tonight was different. Tom and I danced all the dances together. We were singing along with the songs. We both knew all the lyrics. We had a great time. They say I have to move into something called assisted living and sell my house, but I don't want to. I want to stay in my home. People will be coming for the furniture soon. They'll take everything that's mine, and I won't remember who I am. I look at the old trunk and don't know if I emptied it like they told me to. Was it just yesterday? I get up slowly using my walker as leverage. The trunk still sits at the bottom of the bed. The blonde wood long ago covered in a striped blue and green wallpaper. I guess that was the fashion then. I open the trunk. The inside still smells of cedar. I see a comic book at the bottom. I laugh. It's Donald Duck, one of my favorites from long ago. I bend over reaching for the book, steadying myself against the raised lid so I don't fall in. Wouldn't they be surprised to see me there in the trunk reading a comic book? Grabbing the comic, I head across the room to a box holding the other books. But on the way, my walker gets caught on the edge of the bed. I bobble the book a bit and a dry flower falls out. A big smile appears on my face. I remember smushing that flower in there for safekeeping. Tom gave that to me at our first dance. A rose for my rose, he said. I do remember. I am Rose. So,
Thank you. Have we got any more readers?
I have a piece.
Oh, good. Okay.
Um,
Froggy.
this one really threw. I went down so many rabbit holes with this. It's called A Bee's Labyrinth. A secret maze hidden by petals, its center prize of stamen full of pollen, nectar, and a scent so sweet. Done.
Wow. Well, I think the best way to start off our understanding and appreciation of what everyone has said here is to ask this question, which you all may want to weigh in on. In responding to this assignment, was it some of you chose poetry, some of you chose prose. Is there something about the idea of the rose that led you to either route? I think many of them seem to be poems, and probably my rough estimate maybe about 2/3 were poems and 1/3 were prose. Anyone want to comment on that? Why did you choose the form that you did, and was it tied up with your choice of subject?
This is Froggy. For myself, I started out and it was just getting longer and longer and longer and longer and longer. I'm like, this is getting ridiculous. So I pulled out like a word from each area and put them together, and that was it. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say her poem is a haiku?
Yes, it certainly is the length of a haiku. Did you think of it as a haiku, Froggy?
No, I'm just lucky like that.
Okay. Well, there are fortunate accidents. That's what's called found art.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Who would like to comment? Personally, I thought it was extremely effective. Exactly how you wrote it. Does anyone like to comment?
The choice of the form and the choice of the subject, were they related, unrelated? What came first in your mind?
Actually, Bob, just to stop you, we had a couple people whose hands were raised to comment.
Okay.
So we had Geraldine, Michael, and Christopher.
Okay,
All right.
let's get to those
I think
comments.
Geraldine is up first.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is Geraldine. I think I misunderstood. I thought it was supposed to be a poem. I thought our assignment was that it was supposed to be a poem. So I did mine as a poem. I probably would have preferred exploring some other form, but that's what I thought the assignment was.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
I'm done.
I think that's right in the sense that I wanted to lead you toward a poem, but I said if you wanted to write prose, you could. So anyone else want to comment on that? There were Lauren had mentioned there were some hands or people that indicated they wanted to comment on that question.
I think Mike next.
Go ahead, Mike. And okay.
Can you hear us, Michael?
Michael, no.
I didn't raise my hand, but I'll go. I'm not really, I think interested in poems, and I don't think I'd probably be very good at it either. So I chose prose instead. But maybe someday I'll give it a whack.
Okay.
You brought in about your father being a gardener and of roses. You did bring that into your memoir, correct?
Yeah, yeah. He was big time on roses, and he grew all kinds of different roses, and they were the seeds or whatever you purchased to make roses were from the best rose houses, and he loved doing it. I mean, he was really into it. But I didn't inherit that love of doing roses or gardening. I'm pretty sure that I probably wouldn't do such a hot job gardening, because I'm not all that interested in it.
Michael, let me suggest this. If you did want to try your hand at a poem on this subject, I guess the question in your mind and I think the reader's mind was what was the nature of there's interest in the roses and it would be somewhat characteristic of a poet to let me imagine why he was interested in them, and that could also be something that would expand your memoir or be a sidelight, or you could write that as your handwriting that as a separate poem. It can be a prose poem.
Good idea.
Okay, who's next?
I just wanted to make a comment on the reason I chose that poem or wrote that poem after the announcement of today's assignment is for me, symbolism, the symbol of a rose, sweet, meant, of course, you spoke on many of those attributes, Bob, love, romance, beauty, the scent of a rose, going back through history, through literature. And so typically you think of a rose as a beautiful thing with beautiful outcomes or an approach of giving or forgiving or whatever. So I just wanted to write something that pretty much spoke on the opposite, I suppose, the opposite of what some people see or don't see or take for granted. And it was meant to be a beautiful thing, but it turned out to be a disaster. And that's all I'm done.
I think well, because
Yeah, I think so.
gardens are often a disaster, but your rose garden really good.
That was not good.
And the ending, turning into the concrete, it was sort of, it could mean this was a broader life experience than just growing that poor tangled garden that everybody beat up on. I liked it very much. I just mentioned at the beginning of the session that a rose can be a formidable foe when it can draw blood, prick and draw blood. Yes, most of us think of the rose as, very many beautiful images, but it does have a darker side too. Would anyone else like to comment
It
on?
looks like Therese and Christopher had their hands up and then Michael just raised his hand.
Okay.
And Geraldine
Geraldine,
raised her hand.
all right.
Christopher, was it? No?
Therese and then Christopher.
Okay,
I wrote down everyone's name.
okay.
Therese.
Hi, I think my hand was raised from the previous time. But I just want to say thank you, and everybody's outlook on this is amazing. Over.
Christopher, did you have a comment?
Yes, I wanted to respond to Bob's comment earlier about why 2/3 of us were sort of driven toward poetry. I like to think of my entire writing exercise throughout this workshop as sort of almost being divinely driven. Rose has a very specific meaning to me. I've actually, as I mentioned, some pretty mystical experiences involving roses, and Therese, sort of along the same lines as Therese at the birth of her daughter. As a matter of fact, the aunt that passed away in 2006, where I smelled roses, her name is actually Sheila Rose. So I really felt as if the poem was more, the roses has such a universal meaning in our culture and society, as you mentioned, Bob, going back to ancient Greece, going back to Aphrodite, and of course, my representation of it has always been the manifestation and symbolism as a Virgin Mary. I feel very strongly that the Virgin Mary has tried to communicate with me personally, as she has a number of people in her faith, and that's the way, especially being blind, that she communicates with me, because I don't have visual experience or don't process visually. So she gives me other, through my other senses, and that's manifestations, and communicates me in that regard. So wasn't expected to go off on a tangent like this, but to answer your question more directly, I feel like the poem is much more universal, and that's why I think a lot of us are being driven toward writing poetry. Over.
Very interesting comments, and I think, you know, we've tried to point to the similarities between prose and poetry throughout, but I think in this particular exercise that you all agreed to undertake, it points to some of the potentialities and the value of poetry, you know, in relation to prose. It does. There are certain urges, subject matters, experiences, etc., that do drive one to poetry. I think we're getting some understanding of that. Who else is waiting? Lauren,
Geraldine.
Next is Mike and then Geraldine.
okay, Mike.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on Rosetta's piece. I was really interested in it because it was so different. You think of roses and everything is beauty, 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 and she captured the dark side. You know, comments like little boys picking the petals, snatched up by its roots. For me, I thought that was terrific, and I was really captivated by that versus you know, the beauty which we hear all the time of a rose. I'm done.
Okay, interesting comment. That goes to the nature of what the writer Umberto Eco said about why he chose the title, The Name of the Rose, for that great mystery novel. You know, it's so common that it's lost any meaning at all. Some of you found meaning that was very conventional but moving, nevertheless. Helen's piece, you know, very moving, done in a nice poetically structured fashion. But I do think that you all realized also the idea of cliche, and you know, what can you say about certain things that would really grab people? You know, and it's tied up to with some other things we talked about, like who's the audience for this?
Hi, I'm sorry to stop you, Bob. We're getting some feedback from somewhere on the screen, so I just want to.
Okay.
I'm just going to mute us and unmute us for a second.
All right.
Okay. Let's see
Okay.
if that's any better.
Yeah, well, that is a good comment. I'll just end there with that thought of Michael's, that there are certain things that we feel we want to, you know, hear something different about them, and don't want want the same old things said. But there are some very beautiful things that are said. I said, you know, I go back to Helen and the joy of that poem that she wrote. Any other thoughts on?
Geraldine had a comment.
Go ahead, Geraldine.
I think you were asking to speak as to why we wrote about the rose, or I was almost indifferent when I heard what our title was, because I spent so much time kind of writing what I feel is the voices of others or people's voice. I didn't think that I could write anything, or that I would write anything about a rose. But it was challenging to me, and I always like a challenge. In studying the colors of the roses was very informative for me. The piece that I heard, I liked the vast difference, the variety. It was such a variety of interpretations of the rose, all the way from Rosetta's. I am a huge gardener. I do a community garden. And Rosetta, I could hear your investment in planting that garden and then having those roses, and then almost the violation of having people destroy it, but it was done in a very kind manner. I like the way that you flipped it. I also like kind of flipping things. I like the way that you flipped it. And like I said, I liked it. Everybody's different interpretations. It's just, you know, kind of funny how each of us are so different. And you can take one word or one title or one concept and go in many places with it. So I'm done.
Thank you. And that brings us to another interesting point that has been made in other sessions, that poetry stimulates a conversation, and the conversation first with you and the subject matter and the form you choose, but then also with the audience, and this sense of conversation that's stimulated by poetry is very clear right here. Over. Any other comments?
I thought it was very interesting how Christopher, he talks about his lack of vision, but his concentration on scent and odor, how it's led him to faith, how it's led him into, he mentions how important it is to him. It's almost a guidance in some cases. I thought that was very, especially for the people involved in this session. I thought that was very interesting.
I have a question, not so much a comment, but a question. You probably covered it already, Nora and Bob. Did we already discuss what makes prose prose? I can read about it, but I love, and I do continually study and read up on it, but can you give some insight on the difference between prose and just a very long epic poem, I guess?
Oh, interesting. And you brought up the epic poem, and that is like a story. In fact, if the term had existed then, it would be a novel. It is a novel that kind of captures the spirit of a people or an age, and it's usually got it. You know, epics started out as something that was sung or recited rather than written down. And of course, really until Gutenberg in the 15th century, there was not a real opportunity to read, and literacy had not been a factor. So the oral, AURAL, and ORAL quality of poetry was was really a major factor in the delivery and audience appreciation of it. So a lot of the figures of speech developed from that base. The thing about the movement from narrative to personal statement, if you will, the lyric poem, the epic moves to the lyric pretty much in the late 18th and early 19th century, with people like William Blake and William Wordsworth and Coleridge, and but again, there's still a narrative impulse. But I think we think of poetry now as lyric poetry, not as epic poetry. Epic poetry was written from a unified culture. People all shared the same values. Lyric poetry is appropriate to our age because, as we've seen with all of these readings just here with the group today, everybody has an individual perspective, and freedom and individuality of perspective are qualities of the lyric poem, and they fit the diversity and multiplicity and maybe the confusion of our culture now, which is very individualistic in terms of the individual. So if narrative poetry or the novel today, which has replaced narrative poetry and epic, if it can be considered a movie, lyric poetry can be considered a snapshot, almost like something we appreciate and have to have a picture of on our cell phone even. And the struggle to express that is what the lyric poet does. So I think this idea of novel, of movie and snapshot is a useful way to understand the difference between narrative poetry and lyric poetry. Both are done today. There are many examples right in the 20th century and up through the 21st century of narratives written in verse form. The quality that, if you're writing in ancient Greece, that you have to have is memory. Memory is essential on the part of the speaker, the bard, if you will, and the audience. And so rhyme was not a figure in ancient Greece, but meter was. It was a way of remembering the poem. If you look at a 100-page poem, that these would be recited from memory, and they would be stories told over and over again. The lyric poem is something that comes upon you as a flash rather than a long extended statement. And I guess I've made a long extended statement, but I hope it's helpful. Over.
Yeah, this
Very
is
helpful,
Froggy.
thank you.
This is Froggy. I get what you're saying, because I always start out with paragraphs and pages, and then I end up narrowing it down to just a few phrases. I guess I'm trying to challenge myself to write that baby shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And, get it across in as few words as possible. Back to Christopher's comment earlier. Mary did carry the scent of roses, and it was said through the Catholic Church that the best way to honor her was to say the rosary made of rose petals, where each of the beads were made of rose petals. Don't get them wet though, because they do dissolve. But you are correct though, in that matter of fashion. In fact, when my mom was actively dying, I took rose oil and I anointed her with it. With each anointment, I said, "With this cross, may you cross." And when I made the final anointment, she did cross. And it was something that I put into her coffin for a good scent for the grandchildren. So roses, I mean, new life and breath to death. They cover it all. They're in the baby bouquets and they're in the coffin displays. Done.
Part of what you've done is to bring up a number of things that you have noticed and others notice. That's the nature of what a lyric poet does. Pays attention to his or her surroundings, to what happens, and doesn't just take things for granted. And that's the struggle of writing lyric poetry. What it goes a lot deeper than saying, well, what does this really mean? It's how does it affect you, and what does it say to you and to others? And so a lot of times in conversation, when someone goes on and on and on, you kind of lose the thread. The challenge of the lyric poet is to get the compression down so that what is being said is clear, but brief, concise, and very powerful. Over.
When Froggy speaks, I would think she is a natural poet, because when she speaks in a very poetic way. Her descriptions are extremely poetic. She chooses her words very carefully. She describes things so succinctly. I think you are just a natural poet. And that's why you have chosen to express yourself so well with poetry. I have one other quick comment. It's about.
Thank you.
I would like to say that as a fiction writer, there's a very close association between fiction and poetry. The writers I most admire are writers who have that lyricism, that music, and that imagery that makes their writing extremely poetic. And that's the way I try to write myself, and the writers I admire do it beautifully. Over.
The thing a poet does to get back to the notion of avoiding cliche, the poet stops to smell roses, cliche included. I guess the question is, did you like doing this? I think the answer is yes, but if there is something to be said to expand the yes, what is it? What was it? I heard hearing everyone else speak as and hearing all the different perspectives. And for some of you, it was difficult, not natural at all. Some of you did not want to use cliches. Some of you want to to express your excitement. Uh, there is a value to the expression, whether or not it's perfect or not. Would you go ahead?
I like to comment. I enjoy doing it. I personally, I was so afraid of being cliche that I completely avoided looking up poems that were written before about the rose, or trying to recall other writers that have written about the rose. And I really did want to look up the rose garden and see how many were out there. But I knew once I start doing that, it would become so difficult not to emulate or, copy someone else. So I had to sit down with a blank slate and just write from emotions or write from the heart on that piece. But I enjoyed the challenge. I'm done.
This is funny. I totally agree with that, because the puppy that you see, her name was Rosie.
Oh.
And her AKC name was a rose by any other name is Rosalina. So you almost ended up with a story about a dog.
Oh, well.
This might be a good time to, we know that some of you have had other things that you wanted to read, and sometimes we get kind of lost, in the present assignment. If there's anyone who has something that they would have liked to have read earlier, or have something on hand they would like to write now, please raise your hand and you'll be welcome to do that. Over. Rosetta. Go ahead, Rosetta.
Okay, so I have this long piece that I got halfway through. I'm not going to read the entire thing again, but I will start from the beginning. I've actually gone back and revised sections of it. So maybe a little bit this time and a little bit next time. I'm not sure how much you recall. But the title was, or is Southern Style. And let's see. Okay, so I hunger for mornings filled with savory smells drifting from the kitchen of largemouth bass, walleye, and bark horse sausage, and pillowy fluffed eggs with cheese and grits boiling or frying in a sizzling skillet. Yes, I want to return to Gaston Lake, to the June bugs, water beetles, fireflies, and snakes, where Sunday's brunch will probably include black and white crabs and herring from the Schuan River. I long for those country mile rides or drives that leisurely reach destinations, switching from rolling down the window to tuning or turning up the air conditioner as temperatures rise to unbearable heat. I want back the days of following a trail of lobbly, longleaf eastern and western pines whose cones go kerplunk at night and salute the cloudless skyline along the daytime route. And then stopping along the way to buy fresh watermelons, collard greens, peanuts, pecans from the local farmers. It is always a joy to pick deep red, plump and juicy Camarosa berries in late spring. Nothing beats moseying down the road a piece to a Southern style family gathering where usually a delectable meal awaits. A meal that includes pulled pork in place of the Northern style barbecued ribs. You know, ribs with the bone in and lots of sauce. or fried chicken, fried catfish with buttered beans and collards, cooked with fatback and sweet bread. All compliments of old Granny's famous recipes. After dinner desserts such as peach and apple cobbler, banana pudding, pound cake with a scoop of homemade ice cream, and a to die for Aunt Sarah's red velvet cake. Unlike those overly processed Sara Lee cakes sold from freezer cases in the local grocer, Aunt Sarah from Henderson is the real deal. And then here comes Uncle Charles with his jar of pickled pig feet. So that's half of the first part. I don't know if I have time. Should I go on to the next part, or we can stop there?
I think we'll get the next part next time because we're running a little down on time. We still have some time left. Just quickly, I'm trying to think of what you've changed. I think the imagery of that is such a nice thing in that piece. No, it's the sense. All of the senses are engaged in that imagery, and that's a very good thing. And I think most poets explore imagery and what it is that makes you that shows you the experience rather than just tells you about it. You know, I went to a nice pulled pork banquet. Well, what are all the fixings? What all was on the table? And
Where's the sauce?
where's the sauce? Right. Okay. I want to try to formulate an assignment for next time, and I want some participation in your thoughts of as we move through poetry, and I guess this doesn't exclude the people who are writing prose and just prose like Michael, whatever, but I'd really like to know what you really want to do to improve your skill, your calling as a poet. And so are there some things that you'd like to concentrate on in future sessions? And they can be technical things or maybe, subject matter as we did with the rose, but are there some areas that you would like to explore in the way we've explored the rose here? Some of the technical things, I will hold up a book, and I hope that Michelle can get it at the library. And if you don't have it in your library, be sure to get it. In 2007 and 2008, I taught the semester each year of writing of poetry writing at Niagara University, and I used this text. It's called Writing Poetry, and it's by Michelle Boisseau and Robert Wallace, and it's the publication information. Pearson Longman, and it's and I used the 2008 edition. Some of the things that come into a poem where you're really getting, going into it deeply and getting very serious about it, and some of the things from the table of content interesting, and maybe you might want to think about those things that would be helpful to you to explore here. Making the line, that's an important consideration. Why is poetry lineated, and and what do terms like end stop and enjambment mean? And why are they important to the poet? We talked about the oral quality. There's a visual quality too. And does the line affect both the oral and the visual quality? So making the line is one area. The sound of poetry, the sound and sense. Will you explore figures of speech like onomatopoeia, which is basically the sound of the word really conveys the meaning all at the same time, like crash. There's a kind of an onomatopoetic quality to that. Other things that are involved in that. The idea of metaphor and simile. What are some different ways of thinking about them? And putting the poem together. What are some of the considerations? Like we talked about the title, and that's a whole other subject. The way that the title can be expressive of the overall content of the poem, and there are even some poets, I being one of them, who will take the title and then enjamb it, fold it into the actual first line of the poem. So and then there's the subject of revision. There's a whole section of this book on revision, which, if you get it, it'll be interesting. Norah talks a lot about revision, and maybe in some of the early sessions there might have been an impression that I thought that you had to have intention right from the start. Yes, there is intention, and I think indicated by Geraldine. I didn't want to write something that was cliche. Okay, that's an intent, but then the execution of that. How do you look at revision? Are there, it sounds like a either a difficult or meaningless statement. Well, you just change it. No. Poets are famous for doing scratch outs. When I wrote totally with pen and paper, I mean, you could look at something that I had and it'd be total scratch outs. I mean, and if you look at the papers of well-known poets that are, in libraries, you will look at their manuscripts, a lot of cross-outs. What a poet does is to concentrate on the individual word and its association and resonance with other words in the same piece. So the scratch outs are ways of not just finding synonyms, but finding appropriate synonyms or antonyms. So anyway, I will rest there. And is there anything I've said or some things that I haven't that you as a group, and we've got about 5 minutes to throw this around, and are there some areas you'd like to see that would be valuable to you to see discussed and practiced in what remains of this course? Over.
One thing I would like to say, Bob, is if you want to become a really good poet, read or have audiobooks of great poetry, good poetry. There's Garrison Keillor made a wonderful collection a few years ago. I keep it on my bedside table. You can open it anywhere. These are accessible poems. You grasp them. You don't have to sit there and spend hours trying to figure out what these poets were trying to say. They say it clearly, beautifully. I use the word musical again. And Garrison Keillor, as a writer himself, has excellent taste, and you can find a poem for almost any occasion, and these are great poems. So if you want to write great poetry, read a lot of good poetry. It will rub off. You will be impressed by it.
And to underscore what Nora has just said, this book has so many sample poems that try to illustrate each of the things I was talking about. And at least 1/3 of the book is poetry, published poetry, as opposed to preachment about how to write it. Good poems. While you're thinking, and of what you might want to respond to, don't forget humor in poetry too. 'Twas brillig in the slithy toves that gyre and gimble in the wave, all mimsy with the burrow groves and the mome rats outgrave. Beware the jabberwock, my son, the claws that snatch, the beak that bites. Beware the jub bird, and frail the frumious bandersnatch. Make up your own language. Okay, which is what was Carol. Yes. I think that I shall never see a billboard as lovely as a tree. Alas, unless the billboards come down, I will never see a tree at all. Okay.
And Billy Collins.
Yes, yes. So I give you in the next couple minutes, are there any thoughts? The one assignment that still we haven't really held to, and I'd like to, is some piece of writing on the value of poetry, that value that relates to you and to your reader. So that will be something we'll consider next time. And I would challenge you to write or have something prepared to speak on that, and maybe just write another poem if you are inclined. No dictating of the subject, free form, free lyricism, your own thoughts. But as far as the technical stuff, any thoughts on what would be most valuable to have in the remainder of this course?
This is Geraldine. One of the things that I would like to learn is I speak my poetry a lot, but I would like to learn how to place it on the paper so that it has the same power or the same meaning if someone else reads it. I know what I'm reading, but I'm now looking more towards getting it in the written form. I'm done.
That's a very good comment. It goes to the point that I read from the table of contents in this manual, the idea of lineation, and that's a very, very good point. And it doesn't have to include italicism or whatnot, but how do you structure the line? And I won't say any more, but I think we can have a lot to say about that. Someone else?
This is Kelly. Thank you so much today, Bob. It's 1 o'clock. If everyone out there could please email me the work that you submitted for today so we can try to include them in the upcoming anthology, or to have an opportunity to work with them again. We'd appreciate that very much. But I have to say, congratulations to Bob and Nora and Lauren and the team. We're doing an amazing job running our technology today. You guys deserve some snaps and some roses.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly. Any other thoughts before we close on what would be helpful to concentrate on? The idea also incorporated into Geraldine's statement, I want to do a lot with, and that's the reading of poetry, the performance of poetry. I think that's also embedded in in that comment of Geraldine's. I've given, I get pretty damn near 1,000 poetry readings, and I've learned something in that that I think might be helpful, and I would be happy to share whatever knowledge I've gained from that. And again, listening to poets is good. Get out that the audio books, and also just as a prelude to that, listen to Frank Sinatra sing, and you will, if you can deliver and perform your poem as Frank Sinatra sings, it's a long way toward something that will be truly effective and have a great impact on listeners. Okay, so the assignment, another poem, and also the statement, either prose or spoken, the value of poetry to you. Are we clear? Yep. Okay, thank you, guys, really.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
You guys enjoy your weekend.
Thank you. You as well. Talk to everybody next week.